Hello, this is Bill Harvell, fellow dying inmate in the mental asylum that is our world. We pray that this presentation helps mature and deepen our journey in the faith. Look below for a list of resources used in creating this presentation. At part 2, how you doing, sir? Look at Santa Claus just came.
I heard there was a party.
There's a party and you're invited, brother.
Santa Claus.
And I'm sitting in the front row because he promised he's going to make it all clear today.
Well, something like that.
I haven't had a bit of sleep all week waiting for today.
Wait for that cliffhanger to get resolved. How is Mary? How is Mary and Joseph? How are Mary and Joseph going to get out of this jam? We left them in a terrible pickle.
And I haven't slept in a week. So here I am. Let's go.
Last time we discussed the threat of honor killing that Matthean Mary was under. And then Matthew chapter 1 verse 18 reveals a tale of terror, one of many texts of terror in the Bible, a Middle Eastern library. Matthew chapter 1 verse 18 and 19 in a culturally plausible translation. This is the origin of Jesus Messiah. When his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found with child through a Holy Spirit. Joseph, her husband, since he was a righteous man, yet unwilling to expose her shame, decided to divorce her quietly. What does it mean to divorce her quietly? Well, we realize with the image on the screen what it means to divorce her in the normal way because of this situation, exposing her to her brothers and her father, who would then be responsible for killing her, which still goes on in many parts of the world. These are called honor killings, honor crimes, right? But what does it mean to divorce her quietly? Recall that in this culture, everybody's business is minding everybody else's business. This is a culture that hasn't significantly changed in 4,000 years. Joseph decided to divorce her quietly. The problem with that translation is that nothing is quiet in the Middle East. So there really is no quiet divorce. It's a bad translation. Better translation would catch the connotation in Matthew's Greek and put leniently. Joseph, the righteous, holy man, has decided to divorce Mary leniently. He's decided to be lenient. What does that mean, to be lenient? Well, we got to go back to the Torah. We got to go back to Numbers chapter 5, verses 12b to 19. The best commentary on the Bible is the Bible, where we find, if a man's wife goes astray and becomes unfaithful to him by virtue of a man having intercourse with her in secret from her husband, and she is able to conceal the fact that she has defiled herself for lack of a witness who might have caught her in the act, or if a man is overcome by a feeling of jealousy that makes him suspect his wife, and she has defiled herself. Or, if a man is overcome by a feeling of jealousy that makes him suspect his wife, and she has not defiled herself, but he just has a feeling, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest, as well as an offering on her behalf, 1/10 of an ephah of barley meal. Goes on. However, he shall not pour oil on it, nor put frankincense over it, since it is a grain offering of jealousy, a grain offering of remembrance, which recalls wrongdoing. The priest shall first have the woman come forward and stand before Yahweh. In an earthen vessel, he shall take holy water, as well as some dust from the floor. Okay, now, dust from the floor. You know what these people are walking in all day, right? Yeah. All right? The animal, there's no sanitation system in this world. So the animal filth, it's what the homeless people are eating in the streets, people like Lazarus in the parable of Lazarus and the rich man, the greedy man. There's sewage running right down the street. When you got to somebody's house, your feet stunk. You need to get a slave to clean your feet. All right, human waste. This goes right out of the window into the street. Okay. All right, so gathered dust from the floor. That's a very interesting image there. The priest gathers some dust from the floor of the tabernacle and puts it in the water. Making the woman stand before Yahweh, the priest shall uncover her head. Keep in mind on that. Uncover her head and place her hand in her hands the grain offering of remembrance, that is the grain offering of jealousy, while he himself shall hold the water of bitterness. That's the water that has that nastiness in it that brings a curse. Okay, let's stop right there and observe some things. What does uncover her head mean?
By taking that off of her head is exposing.
What is she taking off her head, Fina?
A veil.
A veil. And some Catholics have women go to Mass and they wear veil. You never seen this before? In the pre-Vatican II church, you never saw that before? They said it should be everybody, right? And a lot of churches to this day have women that have head coverings in Mass, sometimes hair. Protestant churches sometimes do this, right? You've seen this, right?
Still do it here.
Uncover her head, I'm sorry, is a bad English translation. And it's been bad for a long time in different languages, even back to the Latin. It doesn't mean uncover her head by taking a veil off. It means unbinding her hair. So you're right if you say, even though it was a guess, she didn't have anything on her hair. How can you usually determine, question, how can you usually determine if a woman is married in our culture in the United States?
Wedding ring.
Right, does it have a ring on it like the song goes, put a ring on it, right? Right, usually she will have a ring. That's very nice, put a ring on it, okay? Anyway, oh, that's great. How do you know if people are married in the culture of the Bible? Well, they're just like us, right? They would have rings on their fingers, right?
No.
They would.
It has to do with hairstyle, Evelyn.
It means the head is down if they're not married.
Go on, Lucy.
And then,
Bound hair means you're married. Loose hair means you're not married. Look at this woman here. This is a Palestinian Bedouin from a long time ago. Is she married or single?
Married.
How do you know that?
The treasure.
You know she's married because her hair is bound.
Isn't that something?
So so-called traditionalist Catholics should know that when Paul talks about women's heads being uncovered, this has nothing at all to do with veils. 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3 to 16. But I want you to know that Christ is the head of every man, and a husband the head of his wife, and God the head of Christ. By the way, when you start talking about how husbands are the heads of wives, is he giving us universal cultural arrangements so the man always has to be in charge of families, even to the year 3036 or 4057? In that year, the man always has to be the head, because it's right there. Paul says it, and he's giving a universal description for all family arrangements for all time. Is that true?
Because then.
No, he's giving, right, a culturally specific understanding, one that he could not know different from in his Mediterranean world. That's very important, because sometimes people like to launch into these things. Well, Bible clearly says, right, that for all family arrangements for all time, the man has to be the head. No, that's not necessarily true. Remember what the bishops warned us, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops warned us in their document on fundamentalism in 1987? Do not look for all the direct answers for human living in the Bible, because they can't be found there. The Bible is a Middle Eastern Mediterranean document, my friends. Culturally specific. Okay, continue. And God the head of Christ. Any man who prays or prophesies, stop, prophesy, that Nostradamus? No. So we're going to see later on, prophecy has to do with the here and now. Prophets are experts at God's will for the here and now. There's nothing future. Okay, these peasants don't have a concept of future. They're too busy scratching away subsistence level survival. Prophesies, that means speaks on behalf of God with his head covered with what? Long hair? That's unnatural according to Paul. You have these images of Jesus with long hair because when we started making icons, that was the style in the Mediterranean. But in the time of Paul and Jesus, long hair was not the style for Mediterranean males. They'd be considered transsexuals. Contrary to nature. Nature, not meaning what Thomas Aquinas means, natural law. Nature not meaning what we mean in the sciences, the natural sciences by nature. Nature meaning culture or custom, which for Paul had to go back to God because my grandfather followed it, my dad followed it, so must go all the way back to Adam. Okay, continue. But any woman who prays or prophesies with her head unveiled, that's the bad translation, isn't it? With her hair unbound, as if she's in the house privately with her husband. When she's in public, she has to have that hair tied, folks. Unveiled brings shame upon her head, for it is one and the same thing as if she had had her head shaved, which would be very shameful for a Mediterranean woman at the time. For if a woman does not have her head veiled, bound, her hair tied, she may as well have her hair cut off. But if it is shameful for a woman to have her hair cut off or her head shaved, then she should wear a veil. That expression, wear a veil, it's not really what Paul's saying. She should have her hair properly done. That's what is being said. The Greek is, you need to know the culture. You can't just have the Greek word order. Paul continues, a man, on the other hand, should not cover his head, because he is the image and glory of God. But woman is the glory of man. For man did not come from woman, but woman from man. Nor was man created for woman, but woman for man. For this reason, a woman should have a sign of authority on her head, because of the other than human persons, God's sky servants, the angels, who live in the sky vault looking down. That's interesting. Because of the angels. Why would you have to worry about angels? Why would you have to, if you're a woman, why would you have to show the angels at all time that you're married? Very interesting. Woman is not independent of man, or man of woman in the Lord. For just as woman came from man, so man is born of woman. But all things are from God. Judge for yourselves, Paul continues. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head unveiled? That means really with her head untied, her hair untied. And he's not speaking of like a 13-year-old woman. He's speaking of women that are married and have had children. Does not nature, what does he mean by nature? Custom, culture, itself teach you that if a man wears his hair long, it is a disgrace to him? Elsewhere he says, long hair on a man, contrary to nature. Contrary to nature. Contrary to culture. Contrary to custom. Whereas if a woman has long hair, it is her glory, because long hair has been given her for a covering. But if anyone is inclined to be argumentative, we do not have such a custom, nor do the Jesus groups of God. Okay. So clarifying here, because we want to go back to Matthew chapter 1 and the infancy narrative, right? For Paul, Jesus group gatherings are not domestic gatherings. They may take place in a house, but they're still to be considered public gatherings, because you still have people meeting there together from different families that are part of this Jesus group. They're considered public gatherings, and therefore public rules apply. These events are belonging to the sphere of not of women, which is the private world. They belong to the sphere of men and men's behavior. So public rules apply. Remember, men in this world, the public realm. Women rule the private realm. Even though this is taking place in a domestic setting, it is not a private woman event. It is a public event. So women there should not behave as women in private with their husbands. They should behave as women in public with their husbands. Mediterranean cultural rules apply for public relations. Given Paul's instructions, such gatherings are not private but rather public in nature, and husbands and wives must behave accordingly. Head is the focus of honor in this honor-shame culture. The God of Israel, the head of Jesus the Messiah, the head of the husband, the head of the wife. In first century Israelite circles, a male who communicates with God or imparts God's message must have his head uncovered to show respect to God. Notice that man, that Jewish brother right there with his head. What has he got on his head? A yarmulke. Only centuries later would it become custom for a male Israelite to cover his head in the later Jewish religion. I'm trying to show you, this is one of many, many, many indications to show you there are no Jews in the first century, including Jesus and Paul. They're Judean, barbarian Israelites, and they have very different practices. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you all understand this? That's not in the first century, folks. How many images you might look through religious art or religious bookstores, you see Jesus with a yarmulke on his head praying. I've seen a lot of this. This is trying to be inclusive, because for a long time the church has been anti-Semitic, and we have treated our Jewish brothers and sisters horrifically wrong. But now we're going in the other direction and making this non-historical nonsense where Jesus is like he's a Talmudic Jewish person, praying and behaving in a way that's customary to Jews, later Jews. Jesus didn't do that. Similarly, in Israelite circles, a female who communicates with God or imparts God's message must have braided hair in order to honor God. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 2. When human beings began to grow numerous on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God, that would be the constellations, that would be the angels, the other than human persons that serve God in the sky vault, part of God's Downton Abbey, his fancy entourage in the sky, saw how beautiful the daughters of human beings were. And so they took for their wives whomever they pleased. Because of the angels, when Paul says because of the angels you should have your hair braided, that refers to unattached females with whom the sons of God had sexual relations and produced demigods and demons with.
It's myths.
Yes, that myth is that which will always be true and never happen. But Paul's concerned about it. Could happen. So for the angels, make sure if you're married, you realize you're not in private anymore when you're in these Jesus group meetings. Even if they're in your house, it's public rules apply. So tie up the hair.